moonlight bled silver across the Vale estate, turning gravel to frost and yew hedges to black knives. In the rose garden, Sir Reginald lay on his back, arms flung wide like a crucified saint. A single stab wound bloomed crimson through his white tie. Above him the moon, full, merciless, hung low enough to kiss the blood. No footprints marred the dew. No weapon remained. Only a woman's silk glove, monogrammed LC, fluttered from a thorn bush. From the terrace, a scream shattered the night. Hercule Poirot, sipping chartreuse, set down his glass. "Mon Dieu," he murmured. "The moon. She is witness tonight." Chapter 1. The Crimson Moon. The Vale estate crouched beneath a moon so swollen it seemed to press upon the earth like a bloodied coin. Silver light spilled across the gravel forecourt, turning each pebble into a shard of ice. And the tall yew hedges that flanked the rose garden stood like black sentinels, their branches clawing at the sky. Somewhere in the distance a nightjar called, a thin mechanical whir that grated against the silence. Hercule Poirot, late guest of Sir Reginald Vale, stood upon the terrace of Blackthorn Manor, a crystal glass of chartreuse balanced between his manicured fingers. He had arrived only that evening, summoned by a telegram that had spoken vaguely of a matter requiring discretion. Poirot disliked vagueness. It offended the symmetry of his mind. Yet the promise of a puzzle, however ill-defined, had lured him from his London flat, where the fog of November clung to the windows like a jealous lover. Now at the stroke of midnight, the puzzle presented itself in the most dramatic fashion. A scream, high, splintering, shattered the stillness. It came from the rose garden where the moonlight pooled deepest. Poirot set down his glass with deliberate care, the bass chiming softly against the stone balustrade. He adjusted the angle of his Homburg hat, smoothed the points of his mustache, and descended the marble steps with the measured gait of a man who believed haste to be the refuge of the untidy. The gravel crunched beneath his patent leather shoes, each step a small percussion in the night's orchestra. Behind him, the French windows of the manor glowed amber, silhouettes flickering like shadow puppets as the household stirred. Ahead, the rose garden opened like a dark mouth. The air carried the cloying sweetness of late blooms, hybrid teas heavy with dew, and beneath it something sharper. Metallic. Poirot's nostrils flared, sang. Blood. He rounded the final hedge and stopped. Sir Reginald Vale lay supine upon the flagged path, arms flung wide as though in supplication to the moon. His evening dress, white tie, tails, the starched precision of a man who had dined with dukes, was ruined. A single wound, neat as a tailor's dart, pierced the center of his waistcoat. Blood had welled, soaked, and spread in a perfect circle, the color of burgundy in the moonlight. His eyes, pale, blue, once sharp as flint, stared sightlessly upward, reflecting the crimson orb above. No footprints marred the dew-silvered grass, no weapon lay discarded. Only snagged upon a thorn of the nearest rose bush, a woman's glove, kid leather, dove gray, monogrammed in scarlet silk. LC. It fluttered like a surrender flag. Poirot knelt, the knees of his trousers brushing the damp flags. He did not touch the body, protocol must be observed, but his eyes, green and luminous as a cat's, catalogued every detail. The wound, a single thrust upward angle suggesting the assailant was shorter than the victim. Sir Reginald had been tall, 6 feet perhaps. The killer then no more than 5.5. The blood, still glossy, not yet congealed. Death within the hour. The glove, size 6, perhaps 7. A lady's hand. From the terrace, a second figure stumbled into view, Captain Hastings, Poirot's old friend, hair tousled, dressing gown flapping. "Poirot," his voice cracked. "Good God, is he—" "Dead, mon ami, very much so." Poirot rose, brushing imaginary dust from his knees. Summon Inspector Japp and the household. We must contain the scene. Hastings hesitated, staring at the glove. Elsie, that could be Lady Evelyn or Dr. Crane. Or any lady with those initials, Poirot corrected gently. We must not leap, Hastings. We observe. We deduce. Then, and only then, do we pounce. The manor erupted into controlled chaos. Lamps flared in upper windows. A maid shrieked. Footsteps pounded. Poirot remained beside the corpse, a small, immaculate figure in the vast night, his mind already arranging facts like chess pieces. Inspector Japp arrived within minutes, driven from the local constabulary by a telephone call from the butler. He was a bulldog of a man, square jaw, bristling mustache, eyes that had seen too many corpses and too few confessions. Poirot, he grunted, puffing, thought you were on holiday. Alas, murder follows me like a faithful hound. Poirot gestured to the body. Your observations, Inspecteur? Japp knelt, grumbling about his knees. Stabbed once straight through the ticker. Time of death, say, midnight, give or take. No weapon, no footprints. Clock in the study stopped at 11:57. Stopped? Poirot's eyebrow arched. Or Japp, a stopped clock is a lie told in plain sight. They moved into the manor. The entrance hall was a cathedral of oak and marble, a grandfather clock ticking solemnly. 12:03 now. Poirot paused before it, noting the discrepancy. The drawing room had been prepared for the inquest. Heavy velvet drapes drawn against the night. A fire crackled, casting shadows that danced like guilty consciences. 4 figures waited, each an island of tension. Lady Evelyn Vale, widow of 3 hours, sat upon a chaise-longue black silk gown pooling like spilled ink. Her diamonds flashed with every shuddering breath. She was beautiful in the way of hothouse, flowers, delicate, expensive, and faintly poisonous. Captain Marcus Vale, the nephew, leaned against the mantel, a scar livid across his left cheek, a souvenir from Passchendaele. His dress uniform was unbuttoned, tie askew, eyes bloodshot with whiskey or grief. Dr. Lydia Crane stood by the window, medical bag clutched like a shield. She was tall, austere, her auburn hair pinned severely. Her hands, surgeon's hands, were steady, but her lips trembled. Mr. Felix Harrow, the butler, hovered with a silver tray of brandy. His face was the color of old parchment, eyes darting like a cornered stoat's. Poirot entered like a maestro taking the stage. He bowed, precise, continental. Mesdames, Messieurs, a tragedy has occurred. Sir Reginald is no more. We must establish the truth. You will forgive the intrusion, but the little gray cells, they demand clarity. Lady Evelyn's voice was brittle crystal. Reginald was alive at 11:30. We dined. He complained of indigestion. Dr. Crane prescribed a powder. I retired with a headache. Captain Marcus snorted. Uncle dismissed me at 11, said I was a disgrace to the Vale name. I went to the billiard room. Alone. Dr. Crane's tone was clipped. I treated Sir Reginald's insomnia nightly. He sent me away at 11:15. I returned to my room. Harrow's hands shook as he poured. I locked the doors at 10:30, sir. Heard nothing until the scream. Poirot circled them slowly, cane tapping. Curious. 4 alibis, yet a man lies dead in his own garden. No doors forced, no windows broken. The glove, monogrammed LC, belongs to whom? Dr. Crane paled. I lost a pair days ago, in the conservatory. Lady Evelyn touched her throat. My initials are EV. My gloves are kid, but white. They adjourned to the study, a shrine to maritime wealth. Charts of shipping routes lined the walls. A globe the size of a carriage wheel dominated one corner. The grandfather clock glared from its alcove, hands frozen at 11:57. Poirot tapped the glass. Stopped deliberately. The mechanism is sound. Someone wished us to believe death came earlier. Hastings, who had rejoined them, produced a scrap of paper from the wastebasket. "Found this, Poirot. Torn but readable. Meet me at midnight. Garden. L." "LC," Hastings whispered. "Dr. Crane?" The doctor's eyes flashed. "I wrote no such note." Poirot examined the desk. The blotter was fresh, ink still tacky. Sir Reginald's fountain pen was missing its gold nib. Beneath the blotter, a diamond brooch Lady Evelyn's reported stolen yesterday. "Convenient," Poirot murmured. "A theft to mask a greater theft." Lady Evelyn swooned theatrically. "My brooch! Reginald accused me of carelessness." Captain Marcus laughed, a harsh bark. "Uncle accused everyone. He was rewriting his will, disinheriting us all." Dr. Crane's voice cut like a scalpel. "Sir Reginald suffered angina. I warned him. Stress would kill him." Harrow's tray rattled. "The new will was signed yesterday, sir." With his Mont Blanc pen. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The pen without its nib. The nib, perhaps, now lodged in Sir Reginald's heart. Outside, fog began to coil around the manor like cigarette smoke. The moon, still crimson, seemed to pulse. Back in the garden, Japp's constables strung police tape. Poirot knelt again beside the corpse. The wound was precise, between the 5th and 6th ribs angled upward. A surgeon's strike, or a soldier's. He measured the glove against Dr. Crane's hand. Too small. Lady Evelyn's too large. "The killer wore the glove to plant it," he said, "or to frame its owner." Hastings shivered. "Local legend speaks of the Moon Woman, a ghost who lures men to death beneath a blood moon." Poirot snorted. "Ghosts, Hastings, leave no footprints, but murderers do." Yet the grass was unmarked, the flags around the body clean. Poirot dismissed them to their rooms, constables posted at corridors. He remained in the study with Japp and Hastings. The fire burned low. The clock stopped at 11:57, Poirot mused. Yet death at midnight, 3 minutes unaccounted for. In those 3 minutes the killer struck, planted the glove, and vanished. Japp chewed his mustache. "No footprints, no weapon, it's impossible." "Impossible?" Poirot smiled. "Non, Inspecteur, merely improbable. And improbability is the cradle of truth." At 12:30, a silhouette moved beyond the French windows, tall, cloaked, carrying a lantern. It glided toward the yew maze. Hastings reached for his service revolver. Poirot stayed his hand. "Patience, mon ami. The moon, she is not yet done with her revelations." The figure vanished into the maze. Moments later, a splash from the lake beyond the garden. Poirot pressed his forehead to the cold glass. The fog parted briefly. Something glinted in the grass near the maze entrance. A silver nib, gold-banded engraved RV. He opened the window. The night air rushed in, carrying the scent of roses and blood. "The nib," he whispered. "The murder weapon returns to us." He stepped onto the terrace. The gravel was wet now, fog condensing. The nib lay exactly where a careless hand might drop it. Poirot picked it up with a handkerchief. Ink residue, black, still wet. Behind him, a floorboard creaked in the silent house. He turned. The corridor was empty, but the door to the servants' stair stood ajar. Somewhere above, a child's laughter, soft, mocking, echoed through the manor. Poirot's eyes narrowed to slits. "The game," he murmured, "has only just begun." Chapter 2. The Stopped Clock. The study of Blackthorn Manor smelled of beeswax, Havana cigars, and the faint copper tang that had followed death indoors. The grandfather clock, mahogany carved with mermaids and tridents, stood like a mute accuser in its alcove. Its hands were frozen at 11:57, the minute hand bent slightly as though struck in anger. Hercule Poirot circled it slowly, cane silent on the Persian rug, his reflection fractured across the brass pendulum's polished face. "Stopped deliberately," he declared. "Regardez, The glass is intact, the weights undisturbed. Someone opened the case, halted the swing, and closed it again. A lie told in plain sight. We? Captain Hastings, still in his dressing gown, hovered by the desk. But why, Poirot? To confuse the time of death? Précisément, 3 minutes, 11:57 to midnight, are stolen from us. In those 3 minutes, mon ami, a life ended and a murderer vanished. Poirot's gloved fingers traced the clock's face. No smudges, no fingerprints. The killer had been careful. He moved to the desk, a vast slab of walnut littered with nautical charts, a silver inkstand, and a blotter still damp from recent use. Sir Reginald's fountain pen lay beside it, its gold nib missing. Hastings knelt, retrieving a scrap from the wastebasket. Look, torn in haste. He smoothed it on the blotter. The handwriting was elegant, feminine. Meet me at midnight. Garden. L. L.C., Hastings breathed. Dr. Crane? Poirot took the note, holding it to the green-shaded banker's lamp. The paper was heavy, decal-edged, stationery from the guest suite. The ink, black, iron gall, the same as the blotter. But the pressure of the pen varied, hesitant in the loops of the M and D. Written under duress, Poirot murmured, or by one who mimics another's hand. Beneath the blotter, something glinted. He lifted it with tweezers. A diamond brooch shaped like a ship's wheel. Lady Evelyn's reported missing yesterday morning. Dr. Lydia Crane entered without knocking, her medical bag clutched like a talisman. The lamplight carved shadows beneath her cheekbones. You wish to see me, Monsieur Poirot? Her voice was steady, but her left hand, the one that had trembled earlier, curled into a fist. The note, Poirot said, offering it. Your handwriting. She scanned it, lips thinning. No, though the initial is mine. Someone wishes to implicate me. Your glove was found beside the body. I lost a pair days ago, in the conservatory while pruning orchids. Poirot's eyes flicked to her hands. You wear size 6, Doctor. The glove in the garden is size 5, a petite hand. Dr. Crane's composure flickered. Then it is not mine. The grandfather clock gave a single mournful chime, though its hands had not moved. Hastings jumped. Impossible! Jap burst in, coat unbuttoned, face flushed from the cold. That clock's been dead since we arrived. Poirot smiled thinly. Not dead, Inspecteur. Merely sleeping. Someone has tampered with the striking mechanism, a warning, perhaps. He opened the clock case. Inside, the pendulum hung motionless, but a thin wire fishing line had been looped around the escapement. A gentle tug from behind the wainscot would produce the chime. See, the killer remains in the house, and he, or she, watches. They reconvened in the drawing room. Lady Evelyn reclined upon the chaise, a lace handkerchief pressed to her lips. Captain Marcus paced, boots thudging. Harrow stood at attention, tray trembling. Poirot addressed them. The clock stopped at 11:57, yet Sir Reginald was seen alive at 11:30 by Lady Evelyn, 11:15 by Dr. Crane, and 11 on by Captain Marcus. Who saw him after 11:30? Silence. The fire spat. Lady Evelyn spoke first. I retired at 11:30. My maid can confirm. Captain Marcus. Billiard room. Alone. Dr. Crane. My room. Reading. Harrow. Kitchen preparing Sir Reginald's nightly cocoa. Untouched. He never drank it. Poirot's gaze lingered on the butler. You locked the doors at 10:30, yet the garden door was unbolted when we found the body. Harrow paled. I checked it at 11:45. It was secure. The garden door, a heavy oak affair with iron hinges, opened onto the terrace. Poirot tested the bolt. It slid easily, but the screws were loose, recently tampered with. A scratch on the frame, fresh, bright metal. Entered from outside? Jap suggested. Or exited, Poirot countered. The killer knew the house's rhythms. A stranger would stumble. This one glided. Back in the study, Poirot reconstructed the desk. The inkstand held 2 bottles, black and sepia. The black matched the note. The sepia, dried, cracked, had not been used in months. He lifted the blotter. Beneath, a faint impression of the forged note and something else, a child's handprint, smudged in ink. "A child," Hastings whispered. "The Vales have no children." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "No acknowledged children." He opened Sir Reginald's appointment diary. The last entry, yesterday, LC, 3 p.m. Will. Dr. Crane's initials again. Outside, fog swallowed the moon. A silhouette moved behind the yew maze, tall, cloaked, a lantern swinging like a pendulum. It paused at the maze entrance, then vanished within. Hastings reached for the French windows. "Poirot, we must follow." "Non," Poirot stayed him. "The maze is a trap. Sir Reginald built it after his wife's death, said it kept ghosts out, or in." The lantern light flickered once, twice, then died. Poirot stepped onto the terrace. The fog parted briefly. In the grass near the maze, the missing gold nib, ink-stained, bent. He retrieved it with a handkerchief. The murder weapon returns. But why here? Behind him, the garden door creaked shut. Poirot whirled. The bolt slid home. From the inside, a child's laughter echoed from the maze, high and mocking. The nib gleamed in his palm, wet with fresh ink. Chapter 3. The Missing Nib. Hercule Poirot stood on the terrace of Blackthorn Manor. The gold nib pinched between gloved fingers like a tiny dagger. It caught the fog-diffused moonlight. Mont Blanc engraved R.V. The nib bent at a cruel angle, its slit clogged with black ink and something darker. Blood, dried to rust. The nib had been the murder weapon. Of that he was now certain. Yet it had been carried from the garden, hidden and deliberately planted here at the maze entrance, a breadcrumb for the hunter, or bait for the trap. Poirot knelt, examining the grass. Dew bent the blades, but no footprints. The ground was soft, too soft. Someone had walked here within the hour, yet left no impression. He scraped the soil with a penknife. Beneath the top layer, sawdust, fine and pale. Someone had scattered it to mask their passage. Theatrical, calculated. "Someone who knows the stage," he murmured, "or the surgery." Captain Hastings emerged from the French windows, revolver in hand, face pale. "Jap's men are searching the maze, Poirot. Nothing but hedges and dead ends." "Dead ends are the point, mon ami. Sir Reginald built this maze to confuse intruders. Yet the killer navigates it like a familiar corridor." Inspector Japp lumbered through the fog, lantern swinging. "Found this in the center of the maze." He held up a child's rag doll, calico, button eyes, auburn yarn hair. One arm was torn, stuffing spilling like entrails. "A doll?" Hastings frowned. "The Vales have no children." Poirot took it. The yarn matched Dr. Crane's hair precisely. Inside the torn arm, a folded slip of paper. He unfolded it beneath the lantern. "You took my future, I take yours." "E. E," Japp grunted. "Lady Evelyn?" "Or Eliza," Poirot said softly. "A name not yet spoken in this house." Back in the study, Poirot laid the nib, the doll, and the note on the blotter like evidence in a trial. The grandfather clock, still frozen at 11:57, seemed to mock them. He tested the nib against the wound photograph Japp had taken. The angle matched. The bend in the nib corresponded to the resistance of bone. "Stabbed with his own pen," Japp said. "That's personal." "Intimate," Poirot corrected. The killer stood close. Sir Reginald trusted them enough to turn his back, or was too enraged to notice the blade. He opened Sir Reginald's diary again. Beside the 3 p.m. entry, LC and Will, a second note in pencil. "E arrives 6 p.m. boathouse." "E," Hastings repeated. "Who is E?" Dr. Lydia Crane appeared in the doorway, coat damp with fog. "You sent for me?" Poirot gestured to the doll. "Your hair, doctor. Your initials on the glove. Your handwriting mimicked. And now, a child's toy. Explain." She touched the yarn, fingers trembling. "I had a daughter. Born 1912, Sir Reginald paid for her upbringing, on condition I never acknowledge her. She was raised in the village as Eliza Harrow, the butler's niece, Harrow's niece, the butler who had trembled, who had $500 in crisp notes hidden in his quarters." "Eliza is here?" Japp demanded. "She was to visit yesterday," Dr. Crane whispered. "To discuss the new will. Sir Reginald planned to cut her out entirely." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And you forged the will to protect her?" "I considered it, but I did not kill him." The study door burst open. Lady Evelyn swept in, diamonds flashing. "A bastard child? Reginald's money is mine by marriage." Captain Marcus followed, scar livid. "Mine by blood. Uncle promised me the shipping line." Harrow hovered behind, face ashen. "Miss Eliza, she's in the attic nursery. Been living there secretly for weeks." Poirot led the ascent to the attic, cane tapping each step like a judge's gavel. The nursery door was ajar. Inside, a child's paradise frozen in time. Rocking horse, dollhouse, a cradle freshly dusted. On the pillow, a lock of auburn hair tied with black ribbon. Dr. Crane gasped. "Eliza's." A photograph on the mantel, Sir Reginald younger, arm around a pregnant woman. Lydia Crane, 1912. Poirot lifted a tiny shoe from the floor, size 4, patent leather, mud on the sole. "The boathouse footprints," he said. "Eliza's." The boathouse reeked of rot and petrol. A single rowing boat bobbed, oars missing. On the planked floor, wet footprints, size 4, leading to a loose board. Poirot pried it up, beneath the missing oars wrapped in a blood-stained cloak. The cloak was black velvet, Dr. Crane's. But the blood was stage paint. Poirot sniffed, nodded. Theatrical. Eliza played the Moon Woman. A sodden page floated in the bilge, part of the forged will. Ink ran, but one line remained. "To my true heir, born 1912. They returned to the nursery. Eliza Crane, 23, slight auburn hair wild, stood by the window, doll in arms. "You killed him," Poirot said gently. She nodded, tears cutting tracks through dust on her cheeks. "He called me a mistake, said I'd never inherit. I wore mother's cloak, lured him to the garden with the note, stabbed him with his pen when he turned to strike me." Dr. Crane sobbed. "My fault. I taught her the maze paths." Harrow confessed. "I swapped the nibs to hide my theft. Thought the murder would distract." Lady Evelyn laughed hysterically. Captain Marcus stared, broken. Dawn bled gray through the attic window. Japp cuffed Eliza. Poirot sighed. "The nib returns to its master. Justice is served." But as they descended, the grandfather clock in the hall chimed once, 12 conceals. Its hands had moved. Chapter 4. The Cloaked Shadow. The grandfather clock's chime hung in the corridor like a verdict. Its hands, frozen for hours at 11:57, had crept forward 3 minutes while the household slept under guard. Hercule Poirot paused on the landing, cane arrested mid-tap. Someone had entered the hall unseen, restarted the mechanism, and vanished. The killer, or an accomplice, still moved through Blackthorn Manor like breath through a flute. Poirot descended to the entrance hall. The front door stood ajar, a finger's breadth. Fog curled in, tasting of lake and pine. He closed it, tested the bolt. Loose again, screws stripped. A key turned in the lock from outside. The click echoed. "Someone leaves," he murmured, "or invites another in." Captain Hastings stumbled down the main stair, hair wild, revolver drawn. Heard the chime, Poirot. Thought it was gunfire. "Worse, mon ami. It is mockery. They stepped onto the terrace. The fog had thickened to soup. The garden was a gray void, yet a lantern bobbed at the lake's edge, steady, deliberate, moving toward the boathouse. Inspector Japp joined them, coat buttoned to the throat. Constable saw a figure from the gatehouse, cloaked, headed for the water. Poirot led the way, cane sinking into wet gravel. The lantern light vanished inside the boathouse. A splash followed, oars biting water. They reached the dock. The rowing boat was gone. Only ripples remained, silver in the moonlight. On the planking, a single wet footprint, size 4, leading from the water to the loose board Poirot had pried earlier. He lifted the board again. The blood-stained cloak and oars were gone. In their place, a child's mitten, sodden, monogrammed EC. Inside, the boathouse smelled of tar and rot. A storm lantern hung from a beam, guttering. Beneath it, a crate, lid ajar. Poirot opened it. Inside lay the forged will, now complete, ink dry, leaving everything to Eliza Crane, daughter. Beside it, the diamond brooch cleaned of blood and a vial labeled Digitalis. Dr. Crane's handwriting on the label. Hastings whistled. She planned to poison him if the stabbing failed, or to silence him forever, Poirot said. But the child acted first. A scrap of paper fluttered from the will. Mother, forgive me. The moon demanded justice. E. The rowing boat bumped the dock, empty. The oars were lashed with the blood-stained cloak weighted with stones. A message. Poirot untied the cloak. Inside the lining, a pocket watch. Sir Reginald's, stopped at 11:59. The crystal cracked. 2 minutes after the study clock, Japp noted. He was alive when he left the house. Poirot examined the watch. The crack formed a perfect circle around the number 12. A thumbprint in blood, small, childlike. They rowed to the Island Folly, a Gothic ruin Sir Reginald had built for his late wife. Footprints, size 4, led from the jetty to the folly door. Inside, a candle stub, still warm. On the stone floor, a circle of rose petals, crimson, arranged like a clock face. At 12, a single thorn. Poirot lifted it. The thorn that snagged the glove. The killer returns to the scene, not to gloat, but to mourn. A child's drawing was pinned to the wall. A stick figure beneath a red moon labeled Papa. Back at the manor, Poirot climbed to the attic nursery. The cradle rocked though no wind stirred. On the pillow, the rag doll, eyes now stitched with black thread, blind. Dr. Crane waited in the doorway, face streaked with tears. Eliza's gone. Left this. She held out a locket, inside a curl of auburn hair and a photograph of Sir Reginald, younger, smiling. Poirot opened the locket's back. Engraved. To my moon child, 1912. The household gathered. Lady Evelyn wrapped in sable, eyes calculating. Captain Marcus, drunk, scar livid. Harrow, hands clasped, knuckles white. Poirot laid the evidence on the table. Nib, watch, locket, mitten, drawing. Eliza killed her father, he said, but she did not act alone. Someone taught her the maze. Someone forged the will. Someone restarted the clock. Dr. Crane stepped forward. I forged the will to secure her future. I stopped the clock to confuse the time, but I did not kill him. Harrow confessed. I loosened the garden door. Eliza asked me to. Said she wanted to speak to her father alone. Lady Evelyn laughed. The bastard gets everything over my corpse. Captain Marcus lunged for the will. Japp restrained him. Dawn crept through the windows. The fog lifted, revealing the lake mirror still. The rowing boat drifted back, empty again. Poirot stepped onto the terrace. The rose garden glistened. The bloodstain had soaked into the earth, leaving only a darker patch. He knelt, touched the soil. Warm. A child's voice, soft, sing-song, drifted from the yew maze. Moon, red and bright, took Papa into the night. Poirot entered the maze. The others followed. At the center, Eliza, cloaked, doll in arms. She smiled, serene, terrible. "You found me," she whispered, "but the moon keeps her secrets." She dropped the doll. It landed face down. Beneath, the real will, Sir Reginald's true will, leaving everything to charity. "The forgery was bait," Poirot said, "to flush out greed." Eliza laughed. "Papa wanted to punish us all. I merely hastened the lesson." Jap cuffed her. She did not resist. As they led her away, the grandfather clock chimed 6 to correct for the first time. Chapter 5. The Hidden Child. The drawing-room windows of Blackthorn Manor glowed pale gold as dawn bled across the lake. Eliza Crane stood between two constables, wrists cuffed, auburn hair tangled like seaweed. Her eyes, gray-green Sir Reginald's eyes, were dry now, fixed on the rag doll Jap had placed on the mantel. The black thread stitches across its button eyes looked like wounds. Hercule Poirot watched her with the stillness of a heron, every twitch of her face catalogued by the little gray cells. Poirot broke the silence. "You lured your father to the garden with a forged note. You wore your mother's cloak. You stabbed him with his own pen. Yet you are not the only guilty hand, n'est-ce pas?" Eliza's chin lifted. "He denied me my name. I took his life. Fair exchange." Dr. Lydia Crane rose from the chaise, black silk rustling. "No, my sin. I forged the will. I taught her the maze paths. I stopped the clock." Lady Evelyn Vale laughed, sharp, brittle. "A family of forgers and murderers, how quaint." Captain Marcus Vale slumped in an armchair, whiskey glass empty. "Uncle got what he deserved, cutting us all out for charity." Harrow the butler stood by the door, face parchment pale. "I only loosened the bolt, nothing more." Poirot circled the room, cane marking time. "No. There are threads still tangled, the nib planted at the maze, the cloak weighted in the boat, the mitten, the drawing. These are not the acts of a child in rage. These are choreography." He stopped before Eliza. "You are 23, oui? Yet the footprints in the boathouse, size 4, belong to a child of 10. Explain." Eliza's composure cracked. "I wore my old shoes from the nursery to confuse." Poirot smiled thinly. Confuse or protect. Someone smaller walked those boards. He led them back to the attic nursery. The cradle rocked through the windows were shut. On the floor, fresh mud prints, size 2. A child's. Hastings gasped. "There's another?" Poirot lifted the rocking horse. Beneath, a trapdoor, newly oiled. He pulled it open. A ladder descended into darkness. "Sir Reginald built priest holes during the war," Jap muttered. "Smugglers' tunnels to the lake." A faint cry echoed below, high, frightened. They descended single file, Poirot's lantern casting long shadows on damp stone. The tunnel smelled of earth and candle smoke. 10 yards in, a blanket nest, a candle stub, a half-eaten apple, and a child, no more than 8, huddled in an oversized cloak, auburn hair cropped short. Dr. Crane dropped to her knees. "Rosie?" The child flinched. "Mama said stay hidden till the moon was white." Poirot knelt, voice gentle. "Rosie Crane, Eliza's daughter, Sir Reginald's granddaughter." Back in the nursery, Rosie clung to Dr. Crane. Eliza's face crumpled. "He didn't know about her," she whispered. "I kept her secret. If he'd found out—" Poirot pieced it. "You forged the will to protect Rosie's future. Sir Reginald discovered the forgery, threatened exposure. You lured him to the garden to beg. He struck you. You stabbed in panic." Eliza nodded. "Rosie saw from the window. She followed in the tunnels, planted the clues to confuse, to give me time to escape with her." Harrow spoke, voice cracking. "I found Rosie in the boathouse, gave her my niece's old shoes, Told her to scatter sawdust, move the boat, thought it would muddy the trail. Sir Reginald never intended to disinherit anyone, Poirot said. The charity clause was a bluff to force honesty. Eliza's forgery triggered the tragedy. Lady Evelyn sneered. So the bastard's bastard inherits? Non, Poirot said. The true will leaves the estate to Lady Evelyn, the shipping line to Captain Marcus, and a trust for Eliza, revoked upon crime. Rosie gets nothing but her mother's shame. They walked to the lake. The rowing boat had returned again, now bearing a single white rose Jap cuffed Eliza gently. Murder in the first, I'm afraid. Dr. Crane embraced Rosie. I'll fight for leniency, temporary insanity. Captain Marcus stared at the water. All for nothing. Harrow was led away for aiding. Lady Evelyn swept inside to claim her inheritance. Poirot and Hastings lingered on the jetty. The sun rose, turning the lake to molten copper. Another life ruined by secrets, Hastings said. Poirot lit a cigarette. Secrets are like ice, mon ami. They preserve until they crack. Behind them, the manor's windows glowed. Somewhere, Rosie sang a lullaby to her doll, soft, unbroken. The grandfather clock in the hall struck 7, correct, steady. Poirot tipped his hat to the sky. Adieu, petite lune. Your children are free. Chapter 6. The Ghost's Footprints. Sunlight, thin and winter pale, slid across the lake and struck the stained glass windows of Blackthorn Manor. The blood-red moon was only a memory, yet the house still felt watched. Hercule Poirot stood on the jetty, hands clasped behind his back, watching the rowing boat drift in lazy circles. The white rose Rosie had left was gone, picked clean by the wind or taken by someone who needed its forgiveness. Inside, the drawing room had become a courtroom without a judge. Eliza Crane sat on a straight-backed chair, wrists uncuffed now. Jap had allowed it for the child's sake. Rosie clung to her mother's skirt, thumb in mouth, eyes wide. Dr. Lydia Crane stood behind them, one hand on each shoulder, as though she could shield them from the truth. Lady Evelyn smoked a Turkish cigarette in the window alcove, diamonds flashing with every nervous flick. Captain Marcus nursed a fresh whiskey, scar twitching. Harrow had been taken to the village station. His absence left a butler-shaped hole in the room. Poirot entered, cane marking a slow, deliberate rhythm. He carried a small bundle wrapped in oilskin, the final pieces of the puzzle retrieved from the priest-hole tunnel at dawn. Mesdames, Messieurs, he began, voice soft but carrying to every corner. We have the killer. We have the weapon. Yet the little gray cells, they refuse to rest. There are footprints that do not fit, a clock that walks backward, and a ghost who leaves sawdust in her wake. Let us finish this symphony. Poirot lifted the boot. Rosie's. She wore it in the tunnel, but the boathouse prints were size 4, too large for her, too small for Eliza. Someone else walked the planks. Rosie buried her face in Eliza's lap. Dr. Crane's voice cracked. I told you Rosie scattered sawdust to hide her tracks. She's only 8. Poirot shook his head. Sawdust requires strength to carry. A child of 8 cannot lift a sack. And the mitten found beneath the board, monogrammed EC, was adult size, stretched. He produced the mitten from his pocket. The wool was pilled, the cuff frayed. Inside the lining, a folded note in childish scrawl. Mama, the bad man hurt. Grandpapa, I made him sleep. Lady Evelyn dropped her cigarette. The child confesses? Non, Poirot said. The child believes. She saw the struggle from the nursery window. She ran through the tunnel. She found Sir Reginald dying. In her terror, she pressed the mitten to his wound, trying to stop the blood. The note is her memory, not her deed. Captain Marcus laughed bitterly. So the brat's innocent. That leaves the mother. Eliza lifted her head. I stabbed him. Rosie only watched. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Then why does the wound photograph show 2 puncture marks? One deep, the pen, one shallow, made by a thorn. Rosie's thorn from the rose bush. She tried to pull the pen out. Her print is on the nib. He smoothed the ledger page. $50 monthly to EC since 1918. Eliza Crane. But the handwriting changes in 1922. Smaller, rounder. A child's hand guided by an adult. Dr. Crane forged the payments to hide Rosie's existence. Sir Reginald discovered the fraud yesterday. He confronted Eliza in the study at 11:45. The argument spilled into the garden. Dr. Crane whispered. He threatened to send Rosie to an orphanage. Eliza panicked. Poirot led them upstairs. The nursery safe, hidden behind a false panel in the dollhouse, was no larger than a biscuit tin. The brass key turned with a soft snick. Inside, Hastings read aloud, voice shaking. He staged the whole thing? Partially, Poirot said. He suspected embezzlement. Harrow's $500. He rewrote the will to expose motives. He instructed Dr. Crane to forge a rival document. He did not expect his daughter to kill him. They walked to the boathouse. Poirot pointed to the planks. The size 4 prints were deeper on the return journey, someone carrying weight. Eliza carried Rosie back through the tunnel after the stabbing, he said. The child was covered in blood. Eliza washed her in the lake, dressed her in dry clothes, hid her. The sawdust was to cover the blood trail. He knelt, brushed away sawdust. Beneath a tiny handprint in blood, Rosie's. In the rose garden, Poirot reconstructed the timeline with theatrical precision. Lady Evelyn sneered. So everyone's guilty except me. Poirot turned. You stole your own brooch, madam, to claim insurance. Sir Reginald discovered another motive. Jap cuffed Eliza for murder, Dr. Crane for forgery, Harrow, in absentia, for aiding. Lady Evelyn was warned for insurance fraud. Captain Marcus, cleared but broken, walked into the lake up to his knees, screaming at the sky. Rosie was led away by a matron clutching the rag doll. She paused at the door, looked back at Poirot. Will the moon be red again? She asked. Only in stories, petite, Poirot replied. Poirot and Hastings stood on the terrace as the police wagons departed. The lake was glass. The maize hedges stood silent. Another family destroyed by pride, Hastings said. Poirot lit a cigarette. Pride, mon ami, is the sharpest thorn. It draws blood long after the rose is dead. The grandfather clock struck 8, perfectly. Chapter 7. The Bloodied Oars. The morning mist had burned off, leaving the lake a sheet of hammered pewter. Hercule Poirot stood on the boathouse dock, gloved hands clasped behind his back, watching the single rowing boat drift back from the island Folly for the 3rd time. Its oars, wrapped in the black velvet cloak, were now lashed upright like a macabre mast. Fresh blood streaked the blades, bright arterial red against the dark wood, yet no body floated. No scream had broken the dawn. Captain Hastings shivered beside him, breath fogging. That's not stage paint, Poirot, it's real. Précisément, Poirot murmured. The killer returns to the scene, not to confess, but to correct. Inspector Japp waded in, trousers rolled, and hauled the boat to the jetty. The cloak was sodden, heavy. He unwrapped it carefully. Inside, the diamond brooch, the torn will, and the rag doll, now soaked crimson, its black thread eyes weeping red. Poirot lifted the doll. The blood was warm. Still pumping. Whoever bled this was alive minutes ago. A trail of droplets led from the dock into the reeds. They followed the trail. The footprints, size 4, staggered, one deep, one shallow. A limp. 10 yards in, the reeds parted to reveal Dr. Lydia Crane slumped against a willow, left hand pressed to her side. Blood seeped between her fingers. Mon Dieu, Poirot breathed, kneeling. Dr. Crane's lips were gray. Eliza, She didn't mean, Jap shouted for the constable with the medical kit. They carried her to the boathouse. Poirot cut away her blouse. A single stab wound, mirror image of Sir Reginald's, between the 5th and 6th ribs. The blade had missed the heart by inches. Same weapon? Hastings asked. Poirot examined the wound. The nib, reused. But the angle is wrong downward. The killer was taller. Dr. Crane's eyes fluttered. Rosie saw the doll. Thought I killed her grandfather. Took the nib from the evidence table. Stabbed me to avenge. Back at the manor, chaos reigned. Rosie was missing from the nursery. The evidence table had been overturned, the nib gone. A child's cry echoed from the servant's stare. Lady Evelyn met them in the hall, face pale beneath rouge. The little monster ran past me with a knife. Captain Marcus, sober now, blocked the stair. She's in the attic. Barricaded the door. Poirot climbed the narrow stair. The nursery door was shut, a chair wedged beneath the handle. From within, sobbing, and the rhythmic thud of the rocking horse. Rosie, Poirot called softly. It is Monsieur Poirot. Open the door, petite. Silence. Then the chair scraped. The door opened a crack. Rosie's face appeared, streaked with tears and blood. In her hand, the gold nib, bent further, slick. I made Mama sleep, she whispered. Like Grandpapa. Poirot knelt. Your Mama is alive. Come, let us help her. Inside the nursery was a battlefield. The dollhouse lay smashed, the cradle overturned. On the wall in blood, bad Mama. Poirot lifted Rosie gently. She dropped the nib. It clinked on the floorboards. Dr. Crane, bandaged by the constable, was carried in on a stretcher. Rosie ran to her, sobbing. I didn't mean... Dr. Crane stroked her hair. I know, darling, I know. The household gathered one last time. Poirot stood before the fireplace, evidence arrayed. The tragedy is complete, he said. Sir Reginald's test of greed became a catalyst for blood. Eliza killed her father in rage. Rosie, in grief, attacked her mother. The nib, symbol of legacy, became the instrument of generational curse. Lady Evelyn lit another cigarette. And the estate? Intact, Poirot said. The true will stands. Lady Evelyn inherits the house. Captain Marcus, the shipping line. A trust for Rosie, administered by the court, not family. Captain Marcus laughed hollowly. Uncle wins after all. Charity through chaos. Dr. Crane was loaded into an ambulance. Rosie, sedated, clung to the rag doll, now cleaned. Eliza, in cuffs, was led to a separate wagon. Poirot and Hastings watched from the jetty. The rowing boat had been righted, oars removed. Will the child recover? Hastings asked. Poirot gazed at the water. Trauma is a tide, mon ami. It ebbs, but leaves shells. The grandfather clock struck 9, steady, final. Lady Evelyn's voice drifted from the terrace. Burn the nursery, burn the maze, start fresh. Poirot tipped his hat to the lake. Some stains, madame, even fire cannot erase. Chapter 8. The Island Confession. The ambulance carrying Dr. Lydia Crane and little Rosie vanished down the gravel drive, Red Cross stark against the gray morning. Hercule Poirot remained on the jetty, the bloodied oars now locked in the boathouse as evidence. The lake lay flat and indifferent, reflecting a sky the color of old pewter. Captain Hastings lit a cigarette with shaking hands, the match flaring like a small, brief sun. Inspector Japp stood beside the rowing boat, scratching his mustache, staring at the island folly as though it might speak. Poirot broke the silence. The nib has drawn its final blood, yet the little gray cells demand one last accounting. The child believed her mother guilty, but children see shadows where adults see doors. Let us cross to the island. The folly has more to confess. They rowed in silence, Japp at the oars, Hastings in the bow, Poirot in the stern like a small immaculate captain. The Folly rose from the water, a miniature Gothic ruin of mossy stone and broken gargoyles. Ivy strangled the arches. A single raven perched on the broken bell tower, watching their approach. They tied up at the crumbling jetty. Footprints, Rosie's size 2, then Eliza's size 4, led up the cracked steps into the central chamber. The air inside was cold, damp, smelling of candle wax and wet stone. A circle of melted candles surrounded a child's chalk drawing on the floor, a stick figure family beneath a red crayoned moon. At the center, the rag doll, propped upright, its black thread eyes now unpicked, revealing button pupils that stared accusingly. Poirot knelt, brushing chalk from the stones. Beneath the drawing, a loose flagstone. He pried it up. Inside a shallow cavity, Sir Reginald's missing journal, leather-bound, pages swollen with lake damp. The last entry, dated yesterday, was written in a trembling hand. They know about Rosie. Lydia forged the will at my urging to test Evelyn's greed, Marcus's pride. Eliza must never learn I plan to acknowledge the child. If I die tonight, let the truth die with me. Protect the girl, Hastings read aloud, voice echoing off stone. He staged the forgery himself? Oui, Poirot said, a cruel game. He suspected embezzlement, Harrow's theft, Evelyn's insurance fraud. He rewrote the will to expose them. He instructed Dr. Crane to create a rival document. He did not foresee his daughter's rage or his granddaughter's grief. Jap grunted. So Eliza killed him for nothing? For everything, Poirot corrected. For a name, for a future, for love twisted into vengeance. Poirot pressed a gargoyle's eye. A section of wall swung inward, revealing a narrow chamber barely larger than a confessional. Inside, a child's cot, a tin of biscuits, a lantern, and Eliza Crane curled on the cot, wrists raw from cuffs, face streaked with tears and mud. She looked up, voice hoarse. I came to say goodbye to the moon. Poirot helped her sit. Jap stood guard at the door. Hastings offered water from his flask. Eliza drank, then spoke in a rush. Papa summoned me to the Folly yesterday at dusk. He showed me the true will, Rosie's trust. He said he'd announce it at dinner, disgrace Mother for the forgery. I begged him to wait. He laughed, called me his greatest mistake. I followed him to the garden. The pen was in his pocket. When he turned to strike me, I took it one thrust. I didn't mean... She broke, sobbing. Rosie saw from the nursery. She thought Mother did it. Last night she stole the nib to punish her. I found them at dawn, Rosie stabbing, Mother bleeding. I wrapped the oars, sent the boat, hoping the lake would hide the sin. Poirot laid the journal beside her. Your father loved you in his broken way. He died to protect Rosie's future. You killed to protect her present. The circle closes. Eliza touched the journal. He wrote my name, finally. Jap cuffed her gently. Manslaughter, maybe. The court will decide. They rowed back. The sun pierced the clouds, turning the lake to molten gold. Lady Evelyn waited on the terrace, coat collar turned up, diamonds hidden. Captain Marcus stood beside her, eyes on the shipping ledgers now his. The manor loomed behind them, windows blank. Poirot stepped ashore last. He placed the rag doll, cleaned, eyes restored, into Eliza's cuffed hands as she was led to the wagon. For Rosie, he said, tell her the moon is white again. The wagon rolled away. The lake stilled. The raven flew from the Folly, circling once, then vanishing into the sun. Chapter 9. The Forged Bloodline. The police wagons disappeared beneath the yew arch, leaving only dust and the faint smell of exhaust. Blackthorn Manor stood hollowed out in the noon light, windows like empty sockets. Hercule Poirot lingered on the forecourt, cane planted firmly, watching the last curl of dust settle. Captain Hastings stood beside him, hat in hand, face etched with the weariness of too many truths. Inspector Japp lit a pipe, the match flaring against his weathered cheek. Inside, the entrance hall felt larger without its inhabitants. The grandfather clock, now keeping perfect time, struck 12. Its chime was clear, final, no longer a lie. Poirot paused before it, running a gloved finger along the mermaid carving. The mechanism had been repaired by the local constable at dawn, the fishing line wire removed, the escapement oiled, order restored. They moved to the study. The desk had been cleared of evidence bags, the blotter replaced, the fountain pen, its nib forever lost, gone. Only Sir Reginald's globe remained, spinning slowly on its axis as Hastings gave it a nudge. Poirot opened the safe with the combination Japp had pried from Harrow, 1912, Rosie's birth year. Inside, the true will, sealed in wax, dated 1 week ago. Poirot broke the seal and spread it on the blotter. The handwriting was firm, unmistakably Sir Reginald's. I, Reginald Arthur Vale, being of sound mind, bequeath Blackthorn Manor and its lands to my wife, Evelyn Vale. The Vale shipping line to my nephew, Captain Marcus Vale. A trust of $50,000 to my granddaughter, Rosemary Lydia Crane, to be administered by the Court of Chancery until her majority. My daughter, Eliza Crane, is disinherited for cause known to me. Let no forgery stand. Hastings read the final clause aloud, voice cracking. He knew about the forgery all along. Oui, Poirot said. He orchestrated it, a test of character. Evelyn's greed, Marcus's pride, Lydia's desperation. He dangled the bait and watched them bite. Japp puffed his pipe. Cruel bastard. Effective, Poirot corrected. He exposed every sin but his own. Upstairs, the nursery had been stripped by constables. The cradle gone, the dollhouse boxed, the rocking horse wrapped in dust sheets. Only the chalk drawing remained on the floor, stick figures beneath the red moon, now smudged by many boots. Poirot knelt, brushing chalk from Rosie's tiny handprint. Beneath the flagstone, a final gift, a child's locket, silver engraved RLC. Inside, a curl of auburn hair and a photograph of Sir Reginald holding infant Rosie, smiling. Poirot closed it gently. He loved her. In secret, the forgery was his penance for silence. Lady Evelyn appeared in the doorway, coat over her arm, suitcase at her feet. The house is mine. I'm selling to a hotel chain. They'll turn the maze into a tea garden. Captain Marcus followed, shipping ledgers under his arm. I sail for Singapore next week, the line's solvent again, Uncle's last gift. They gathered one last time in the drawing room. The fire was cold. Poirot placed the locket on the mantel beside the rag doll, now cleaned, eyes restored, a silent witness. The bloodline ends here, he said. Eliza will face trial, manslaughter perhaps, Lydia for forgery, Harrow for theft, Rosie to a convent school. The moon has taken its toll. Lady Evelyn stubbed out her cigarette. And the ghost? Poirot smiled faintly. There was never a ghost, only children playing in the dark. On the terrace, the lake gleamed like polished steel. The rowing boat had been scuttled, oars broken, hull stoved in on Japp's orders. No more messages from the water. Poirot and Hastings boarded the waiting Daimler. Japp tipped his hat. Another tidy bow, Poirot. Tidiness is illusion, Inspecteur. Justice is the only truth. As they drove beneath the yew-arch, Poirot looked back. Lady Evelyn stood on the steps, waving once, regal, alone. Marcus boarded a taxi for the station. The manor shrank in the rear window, ivy swallowing its stones. Hastings sighed. Will Rosie be all right? Poirot lit a cigarette. She will carry the moon in her eyes forever, but children are resilient, like roses after frost. The road curved. Blackthorn Manor vanished. Chapter 10. The Moon's Silence. The Daimler purred away from Blackthorn Manor, leaving only gravel dust and the faint scent of yew. Hercule Poirot sat in the back seat, gloves folded neatly on his lap, Homburg hat balanced on his knee. Captain Hastings rode beside the driver, staring out at the passing hedgerows, the rag doll, Rosie's last gift, tucked into his coat pocket like a guilty secret. The lake flashed once in the rear window, silver and still, then vanished behind a hill. At the village station, Poirot and Hastings boarded the London-bound express. The platform was empty save for a porter wheeling trunks and a newsboy hawking headlines. Moonlit Murder solved, bastard heiress guilty. Poirot bought a paper, folded it without reading, and tucked it under his arm. The train lurched, steam enveloping the platform like departing ghosts. In their first-class compartment, Poirot adjusted the window shade against the winter sun. Hastings pulled out the doll, turning it in his hands. The button eyes gleamed innocently now. The black thread gone. "She asked me to tell them she was real," Hastings said quietly. Poirot nodded. She was. More real than the lies that birthed her. Poirot opened the paper. The article was brief. Eliza Crane charged with manslaughter. Dr. Lydia Crane with forgery. Harrow with theft and obstruction. Lady Evelyn Vale to sell Blackthorn Manor to a consortium. Captain Marcus Vale appointed chairman of Vale Shipping. A small note at the bottom. The child, Rosemary Crane, placed in the care of St. Agnes Convent School, Sussex. Hastings turned the doll over. A seam had split along the back. Stuffin peeked out. He probed gently and drew forth a folded slip of paper. Rosie's handwriting, careful loops. "Dear Mr. Hastings, tell Grandpapa the moon is white now. I forgive him. Love, Rosie." Poirot took the note, eyes softening. Forgiveness from a child, the rarest currency. The train pulled into Victoria Station beneath a blanket of London fog. Porters shouted, taxis honked. Poirot and Hastings stepped onto the platform, the doll now in Poirot's briefcase. A newsreel cameraman snapped their photo. "Famous detective solves moon murder." But Poirot waved him away with a polite smile. Back in Poirot's Art Deco flat, the fire was lit, tisane steaming on the table. Hastings slumped into an armchair. Poirot placed the doll on the mantel beside a photograph of a younger Hastings in uniform. "Will you keep it?" Hastings asked. "No. I will send it to St. Agnes with the locket. Rosie must have her father's smile." He poured tisane, verbena, fragrant, and handed a cup to Hastings. Hastings sipped. It was all for nothing, wasn't it? The will, the forgery, the blood. Poirot gazed into the flames. Nothing? Non, mon ami. Everything. A man tried to buy honesty with cruelty. He paid with his life. A daughter sought a name and lost her freedom. A child sought justice and found only sorrow. The moon watched, silent, and took her due. He lifted the newspaper again. A smaller headline beneath the fold. Vale shipping stock rises 15% on news of stability. See? Even tragedy profits someone. The telephone rang. Shrill, insistent, Poirot answered. A woman's voice, cultured, familiar. "Monsieur Poirot? Evelyn Vale. The sale is complete. The hotel chain wants the maze preserved as a murder tour attraction." Ghastly, isn't it? Poirot's mustache twitched. Ghastly, madame, but inevitable. The public loves a ghost story. She laughed, brittle. "Marcus sails tomorrow. I'm off to Monte Carlo. The moon won't follow me there." Night fell. Poirot stepped onto his small balcony, the London sky a dome of sodium orange. No moon tonight, cloud cover thick as gilt. He lit a cigarette, the tip glowing like a tiny red moon. Hastings joined him, coat collar up. "Another case closed." Poirot exhaled smoke into the fog. "Closed? No. Cases never close. They echo, in courtrooms, in convent dormitories, in the hearts of children who forgive too soon." He flicked the cigarette into the night. Somewhere a train whistle sounded, heading south, perhaps to Sussex. "The moon is silent tonight," Poirot said, "but she remembers."